Gretchen Rose, and I'm an HR director for Cozen O'Connor. I wanted to just introduce the panel today. Before doing so, if you don't mind, a quick welcome and recognition of the event or the events that we're having this week. We are in the Wellbeing After Party, which is designed specifically for organizers, whether it's professional development, human resources, maybe it's an attorney in charge, but the folks that coordinate well-being activities in law firms. We understood that the well-being in law activities focused at the individual level of well-being, which is important, right? It's how an individual would develop and mechanisms to cope with stress, perhaps anxiety, that sort of a thing. But those interventions don't always get at the root causes for organizational level mental health. And that's what we want to talk about this week. And particularly on this call, we want to start to design programs that can help change organizational culture or influence organizational culture. So in addition to the daily webinars, the Wellbeing team has created and collected resources on its website to spark really innovative thinking and to offer guidance for the coordinators in law firms that are trying to evolve the practice of well-being. So for more information, go to lawyerwellbeing.net. I also want to just put a quick thank you out to the after party planning team. They have organized the different sessions that we have this week or that are continuing to go on. Heidi Alexandra, Kendra Broden, Jean Pick, Donna Story, and the PDSC staff, especially Becca Seacrest, who's helping us out here today, and Kathy Bradley. And then especially a thanks to the chair of Wellbeing Week and the vice president of the Institute for Wellbeing in Law, who is Anne Bradford, and Anne is on the call with us today. If you have any questions, you can certainly direct them to her email address. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and take the slide down so that you have a view of our presenters. So let's just jump right in with the folks that are going to share some of the dynamics of their program and how it evolved and what they're thinking about this year as we're coming back out of this pandemic environment. Well, I guess we're not coming out of the pandemic quite yet, but we certainly are emerging from our homes and potentially back in our workplaces. So if I could, I'd love to have our panel start and introduce themselves today. Mary Ellen, maybe I could ask you to go first, followed by Karen, Hannah, and Nicole.
Sure, I'm happy to. It's been a long time since I've been invited to a party, so thank you so much for having me today. I'm Mary Ellen Connerdy. I'm the Director of Diversity and Engagement at O'Melveny. I've been at O'Melveny for a little over 9 years now. I'm based out of the New York office, and I have been returning to the New York office, which has helped my mental well-being. And I'm delighted to be with great colleagues today. Thank you for having me.
Karen, how are you doing? Is your audio okay?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
So hi, everyone. Thank you, Anne and Gretchen, so much for inviting me to be a part of this great panel. And like Mary Ellen said, the party today. I'm sorry that you can't see me. Something went wrong with my connection here. So my apologies for that. But I am from ORIC. I am the Wellness Ambassador at ORIC, which is a new position that I helped to bring about, which was very exciting. And I'm excited to share, about that and all of our other wonderful programs that we've got going on. I've been at ORIC for, oh gosh, now I stopped counting. It's more than 7 or 8 years now. And I also, like Mary Ellen, work out of the New York office, but have been completely remote. So very excited to join my other lovely panelists today.
I am Nicole Lark, Senior Director of Compensation and Benefits with Covington and Burling. Like Karen, I've been with Covington for many, many years now, and primarily been in the HR benefit space, handling the wellness aspects of our program as well. I work out of our Washington, D.C. office, and coming to you from my home in Maryland right now. We are not quite back to the office yet, but hope to do so in the coming months. And thank you so much for having me on the panel. Looking forward to speaking with the other panelists.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Fabricant. I'm the Director of Professional Development at McDermott Will & Emery. I am on the other side of the country, based out of our Los Angeles office. So hopefully I bring some fun West Coast perspectives here. And I'm thrilled to be part of this panel today. We are not back in the office yet, but I'm hoping that that will happen sometime this summer.
Great, thank you all. So just by way of a little bit of background here, this panel has come together to show you a variety of views. We want to make sure that at a strategic level, you have items to hold on to and maybe think about the evolution of a well-being program, but then also at a tactical level, that there are things that you might be able to grab and implement either really quickly or keep in the back of your mind for, you know, the year to come. So we're operating on several different levels, and we have just great perspective from this panel because they're coming from things in different angles, and their backgrounds of the firm have not all started in kind of a single trajectory, that they have come from, they come to well-being from a variety of different spaces. So with that, I wanted to mention that 3 of the firms have been recognized for the Vault 2021 Wellbeing Survey. And this is the first time Vault ever did this, and we can all argue whether there's credibility in Vault or not. But there is something to recognize when we say that employees give feedback and give perspective, and that's where they're getting their information from. So while they might not, you know, rank up there with our Willis Towers Watson and our different analytical capabilities and research firms that are used, certainly Vault had an interesting question on their engagement survey, or what they polled their population on, and it was just around, you know, rate the well-being efforts at your law firm. And so from that perspective, Old Mulvaney, Orrick, and McDermott fared very, very well in this Vault survey, this initial inaugural Vault survey. And so we wanted to make sure that we tapped into them because there's some mature programs going on within their firms around well-being. On the other end of the spectrum, there's an interesting evolution going on at Covington, where they've had a global wellness program for a while, and now they're starting to think about, okay, what's the next step? Maybe what's 2.0 in this iteration? And so we wanted to talk about how that comes about and how you think about, you know, refreshing a program or doing things differently. So Nicole is going to offer us that perspective, which is really exciting as well. So with all of that, I do want to remind you, you're welcome to put questions into the chat. We'll try to take them on if they're really targeted to the topic that we're talking about at the moment. If not, we'll save time at the end to kind of go through the chat and answer questions more directly. But we've got a great session for you today, so let's jump into that. I guess I'd like to start with Mary Ellen. Talk a little bit about the start of the wellbeing program at your firm, and was there a specific catalyst for you? Now, this is going to be a question for all panelists, but let's start with Mary Ellen, and maybe we just continue to go in the order of our introductions.
Great. Thanks, Gretchen. Yeah, I would say that the catalyst for us was the ABA pledge.
Okay.
That really grounded us in the idea that, hey, we're making a commitment, and now that we're making a commitment, we're going to stand by it and deliver. So that was the beginning, and it was helpful in that, it had its particular requirements. And I've said this on panels before, we always go back and look at it to see and measure ourselves as to where we are. It's a great tool ongoing for anybody who wants to use it, who may not have seen it yet. And our approach was, once we made that commitment, we suddenly knew that we didn't know everything we needed to know. And we also knew that while we wanted to get going, we were not going to be in a position to do a big splash. So we kind of started walking and learning to run at the same time. And by that, what I really mean is that we had some help right away from the beginning from a consultant who we engaged with called Ian Shea with a firm called I Am Human, because we knew we needed to do some quick learning. But Ian also offered some programs that were very attractive to us that we thought would help us with some needs analysis as well. And so really it was the engagement with him and doing a slow roll of his programs that got us going. So that was pretty much the way it evolved. We did start with a ginormous committee, trying to represent all things to all people, and quickly found out that in the process, we needed to skinny that way down to really become efficient and effective. And now we're sort of slowly moving that back up to collect more insights from a broader group of people.
Mary Ellen, thank you. I actually want to go back to your work with Ian in a little bit, but let's have our other panelists answer the question. Thank you.
Hi, so speaking from ORIC, I would say that our program that we currently have really grew out of our larger benefits program that we had around, but that several years back, probably somewhere around 2017, 18, we sort of decided to more formalize it and institutionalize it and rebrand it as the current iteration, which is called The Whole You. And I guess I would say this was driven by several factors. We had our best place to work became one of our strategic priorities for our firm. We wanted to restructure also based on our understanding of this interconnectedness of the whole person, which is really the whole crux of our program, that, we wanted it to be no longer just about physical health or fitness and nutrition. We wanted to add in more of a mental health aspect with mindfulness, resiliency, stress management. And I'd say that understanding also grew out of our attention to market trends, right? Certainly demonstrating the impact of stress in the legal industry, certainly things that grew out of, the Institute for Wellbeing, Patrick Krill, the ABA, also feedback from our associates and staff, which we try to take a very active, role in monitoring and taking into account. And also, I guess, just coupled with that, like I said, with Patrick Krill and the ABA and just the industry-wide awakening, I think that we experienced, and like I said, we noticed through trends that we are in a highly demanding profession, right? And that we are more vulnerable. Certainly the string of, unfortunate events and circumstances with suicides in our industry certainly served as a sharp reminder for us for these needs. And for us, it really brought home that we wanted to foster a culture that not only valued connection and this interconnectivity, like I talked about with the whole you, but also like what the ABA pledges is really about, to really make it okay to ask for help, right? So I'd say all of those things sort of coupled together as our catalysts.
Karen, thank you. So comprehensive. Nicole, do you want to share a little bit about your program?
Sure. Covington has historically offered a wellness program, but one that focused more on the physical health and nutrition, things of that nature, and less on the whole person or the mental well-being aspect of it. So we've historically offered that program through partnerships with our insurance carriers in various jurisdictions. We've tapped into their resources to offer programs across the board. However, last February 2020, just before the pandemic hit, we hosted our senior lawyer retreat, and there are several forums in there, some of which were the focus on wellness, mental health, mental well-being, and there was some interesting feedback that came out of those forums, which pretty much indicated that attorneys felt like there wasn't enough resources available, or they weren't aware of the resources that were available through the firm. On the heels of that, the pandemic hit, and that really shone the light on mental health and well-being, and the need to provide resources in this area. Our management committee formed a wellness committee, in April of last year, and that really served as the catalyst to develop programs to make sure that we were taking care of our employees' well-being, and also to promote the services that were inherent in a lot of our programs. In various countries, there are so many resources available, but we had to really think about how to package them to promote them so that people were aware of what was offered and how they can take advantage of the programs that were available. So from that point on, the committee has just been working feverishly trying to make sure that we are taking care of the needs of our attorneys and staff alike, and just making the resources available to them, as well as trying to fill gaps in where we may not have a particular area covered, to make sure that we are providing resources to support employees in those areas.
Thank you. Yeah, the last year was a whirlwind, so yeah. I can imagine transforming a program, very timely. Hannah, talk to us a little bit about your work.
Absolutely. So as Karen referred to, there was an industry-wide awakening around 2016, 2017. You started to see articles like Big Law Killed My Husband, and you started to see, a spate of really sad things happening out in the industry. So we started out with substance abuse training and, flagging up for a colleague in need. And our program grew from there in a really grassroots way. We had a chairman who was a practitioner of mindful meditation. So that was another aspect that just sort of naturally flowed. And we just had a little bit of a different approach in that Erica Golson and myself started infusing wellness and well-being into every activity that we had under the professional development and engagement umbrella. So we just started moving along that path because we deemed it important. And we also recognized in a lot of the associate feedback and the associate forums we were attending, the income partner forums, that this was becoming a bigger issue and people were just starting to speak out about it, and things were coming to the surface that no one had ever thought about talking about in big law or law in general the past years before that time. So it was really just a function of all these things happening at once that started our program out and started us moving in the direction of really providing a comprehensive well-being program and curriculum.
Hannah, that's so interesting. Just tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, when you said you started infusing wellness into kind of everything you're doing after that awakening and sort of the publicity around folks taking their life, that sort of thing. Would you tell me a little bit about what you did to kind of like start to create that foundation?
Absolutely. So we don't have a formal wellness committee. So what we started doing was just noticing places where, and Erica and I wrote an article last year called Ask the Wellness Question, and just started asking ourselves, how can we infuse wellness into this? So that manifested as in our associate development plans, asking our associates to set a wellness goal for the year. That manifested in incorporating wellness questions into our mentoring agendas. All sorts of like smaller little items that were under our purview and under our control. We started just infusing little wellness elements here and there. And that's really how it started.
That's great. That's absolutely grassroots, right? Yeah, that's
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, very
so let's go on to another question that I want to ask the entire panel here, but you might have answered this maybe indirectly in your previous answer, but clarify for us if there are particular challenges that at the time your wellness program came about, or now that you're facing? Are there roadblocks that you're really working through or had to work through in order to have a program have its reach within your organizations? And Mary Ellen, I'll go back to you.
Sure. I mean, I think I'm not speaking for myself when I say, I think the biggest challenge has been really convincing people that we're accepting to speak about these things that we never spoke about before, and that it is safe, and that you won't be stigmatized. And in fact, that we have resources for you. And I'm not going to say that we've won that battle yet, but I think we've certainly, gone a long way to be very clear that we mean what we say in this space. I think now, sort of the remaining, maybe not obstacle, but challenge is just to really deliver on that, and to be able to find ways to share the successes and to really measure how we're doing. So I think measurement also, I know Anne will love to hear this. I think measurement continues to be a bit of a challenge in just quite how to measure success here. But more than anything, creating that belief and comfort.
Thank you. Thank you. And so Karen, how about you? You mentioned some of the industry challenges in your initial response. Are there any challenges that you're facing right now organizationally as you continue to develop your program?
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with everything Mary Ellen said. Certainly combating just the culture of, not wanting to talk about this, everything's fine, I'm type A, and certainly the measurement, that's been for me too, that's definitely a personal challenge for the program. We have a lot of anecdotal measurement devices, but like we were talking about earlier, amongst all of us as a group, it's tricky. It's, the data is not as easy to get. I think also, and probably similar to other firms, I think there's an ongoing regular tension between operating a business, a very competitive, high stakes business, while also trying to care about our employees and provide the support. Like I said, the concept of the whole you is for us extremely important. It's at the crux of everything we do. And like Hannah mentioned too, we also infuse wellness into just every aspect of what we do. It's hard to balance that against, the business aspect, and also just the fact of the concept of the billable hour, certainly, right? And just the stress and the time constraints that naturally arise from this industry for both lawyers and non-lawyers. So we're continually looking for ways to bridge that tension, certainly, in ways that we can be really innovative in providing support within that framework of operating a business. And I think that lately we've been also very successful at innovating some great new policy initiatives, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. One other thing that I'm also very proud of on a personal level, that we've also heard feedback from certainly our staff, is that, there's this divide that has so long existed in the legal industry between lawyers and non-lawyers. And this is something that is like a personal passion of mine, coming from, the staff side of things. And I've had many conversations with our executive team and even our chairman about this. And we're very proud of the fact that our wellness program is one of the biggest ways that we've been able to bridge this gap by, providing something that's, very equal and equitable and accessible and available and relevant to everyone. We also have some other examples, like our parental leave policy that we just renewed. But, I think that we're always looking for ways to certainly bridge that gap. And then, like I said, the regular ongoing challenge of, providing support when there's the billable hour and the constraints of certainly servicing our clients.
Yes, and we're going to talk a little bit about the billable hours and well-being. So that's a great cue, Karen. Thank you. Nicole, how about you?
So I think our challenge has been engagement initially. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we've offered a program, but getting participation, particularly from the attorney ranks, has been a challenge. I don't think Covington is unique, in that regard. You're weighing you're thinking about your work demands and then participating in a wellness program. When you have those two competing priorities, chances are you're going to veer towards that work priority. So that has been a challenge for us to make sure that we're not only engaging our professional staff, but our attorneys as well. I think with the formation of our wellness committee and the fact that it has been promoted heavily by our management, that has helped to bridge the gap. We're now seeing more attorney participation in the events that we offer. So primarily on the engagement side of it, just getting attorneys to participate in the programs to the same extent. Staff will participate, has been a part of the issue for us. But again, when you have our management committee either participating on some of the panels, we've offered internal panels, and that has been huge success for us. When we have senior leaders participating in these events or panels, it certainly sends a signal that we value this and it is okay. I wouldn't say we've made a huge dent in that regard yet. It's still a work in progress in getting that engagement to the point where we're able to measure participation in the respective program. So it's still a work in progress for us, but that has been a huge challenge for us to get individuals to actively participate and engage in our programs. To that extent, we've worked closely with Ann Bradford of Aspire to help to get to the bottom of what are the roadblocks, right? Why are you not participating? And we went through a really good exercise with Ann, which is now helping to shape how we move forward with respect to our wellness program.
Nicole, I can't wait to get into that needs analysis. That's one of my primary questions for you. So that's great. That's just about to come. And I see in the comments that we had a remark that also indicates that, that mental health has been on everybody's mind and that their firm has been offering sessions, but attendance is low. People just aren't engaging. So it seems like all of us are having, iterations of that in some capacity. One follow-up question for you, Nicole, if you don't mind. You mentioned your wellness committee. What's the composition of that committee? Is that both your staff leadership? Was that staff at any level? Is it your attorneys?
So the committee was appointed by our management committee. So we do have partners on the committee, as well as senior lawyers and senior professional staff. And the committee includes members representing the regions in which we have offices. Because we want to take a global approach to this to ensure that we are incorporating the needs, desires of our employees across the board. If you're a US-centric firm, a lot of what we hear are things that come out of our programs tend to be solely US based. So we're very sensitive to that. I want to make sure that we are being mindful of the needs of our international employees and making sure that the program will serve their needs as well. So it's made up of senior partners of the firm, as well as senior lawyers and professional staff.
Thank you. And Hannah, I promise you won't always be the last one to answer a question. We'll start you off first next. But would you answer if there's challenges that you're consistently facing right now in getting your program really widespread?
Absolutely. I feel like our program has great adoption, but we run into the same challenges as everyone else, competing business needs and billable hours. versus, making time, especially now everyone is so incredibly busy. Our lawyers are running themselves ragged. We have a new issue that we're trying to figure out how to address, and that is burnout. And so that is something that has sort of recently come to light at every level of our firm that we are working on how to address next. I don't have an answer. But billable hour. And then, as Nicole said, we also have an international law firm and an international wellness program. And we are very careful to make sure it's not completely US centric. We vary the times of our programs to make sure our European colleagues can attend. And we definitely recognize that not every program that is US centric is going to work there. So we've done things like mental health first aid, that's just for our London office. Our substance abuse programs look a little bit different in our German offices. So those are a couple of the things that we've done to just make sure our reach is appropriate for every office, but it's definitely a big challenge.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit more specifically about your well-being program. And I'm gonna Hannah, I'll start with you, but you can say yes or no if this is appropriate for your firm. But how is the well-being program supporting the return to the office efforts? So are you bolstering practices or coaching or things that would help folks transition from this remote world that we've been in back to the office? And I'm not sure if all of us have return to work dates or a plan to kind of migrate back into our physical offices. So I ask this carefully, but I'd love for you to share if you are.
So at this point, we are one of the firms that does not have a concrete return to office date. I do know that when they release that, we will definitely try to come up with some programming to support it. Some things that we've talked about are doing, mentoring circles and, getting people together to just get connected again. We used to do happiness programs with our happiness committee in all of our offices. So I could see that being a really, really helpful thing to get people re-engaged. I think it's going to be a very slow roll. People are scared to be in a room together. It's unclear what it's going to look like, but we're really excited for the challenge.
That's great. Karen, how about you?
So much like Hannah, ours is nothing is set in stone. It's very much a work in progress, sort of rolling. We, as a firm, have just been, very cautious, very mindful of, the variety of people's opinions and feelings and situations on this. We have 14 offices in the US alone. So we, bridge, and then in addition to global offices, we bridge a lot of different like local circumstances. So all of our guidance has been, bolstered and supported by local trends. And we're constantly checking in through our health vendors on, what other peer firms are planning. We have already been sending out some sort of targeted communications to people about, anxiety and return to work and things like that. Nothing yet set in stone about, formal programming that will be there, other than maybe a party. For some offices. We also, one of the great things about our firm too, is that all of our offices, while we try to be mindful and have a sort of global approach to things, we also are lucky in that we have local resources and talent available with sort of creative, innovative drives of local programming. So we also just try to be supportive of whatever, the local flavor and flair wants to be. So that will, I'm sure, continue along those same lines with this initiative as well.
Thank you. And Nicole, how about you?
So our return to work date is fluid. It's not concrete. Nothing has been decided definitively. And to be quite honest, the development of return to work policies and how we support that has been handled outside of the wellness committee. However, the focus group is a part of the needs assessment. We did a focus group exercises at the end of last year, and one of the recurring theme was, how do we return to work in a remote capacity? Will there be elements of telework once we return, as we did not have an official return with telework policy. So that is something that we are heavily focused on, understanding that there are several needs that needs to be juggled: returning to work, parenting responsibilities, all of that. So as a part of the needs assessment, that feedback was shared with our management committee, who is heavily involved in developing the return to work policies for respective offices. We will have a general guideline, but each office will certainly have their own flavor of return to work, and come up with programs to support them as the decisions are made.
Understood. Great. And Mary Ellen, would you share with us a little bit about what Old Mulvaney is doing?
Sure. Just before this panel, I was on with our weekly well-being, living well committee, and this was the topic. So it's definitely intertwined with well-being and our Living Well program. And we had just completed a pulse survey about returning to the office. And personally, I was surprised by some of the results, because I think we're on the cusp of being ready to phase back pretty soon. Nothing has been announced yet. But the degree of comfort and discomfort, was surprising to me. And the good news is we have a lot of comments. We have a lot of writing comments that are guiding us in terms of what we need to address, in order to perhaps, make this more comfortable for people than it might feel right now. And some things we can address and some things we just can't. But it's been a very good use of our pulse survey to get this. And probably what will happen is we'll repeat that, kind of as it happens, and then when it's more complete, so that we can see what progress we're making and maybe where we're on point and where we're not. So very much the next thing that we're going to be on top of very quickly.
Yeah. Let's dive in a little bit to the individual programs that each of your firms have and that you're so instrumental in. Mary Ellen, if you don't mind, I'm going to start off with you. And you had previously mentioned kind of kicking off your wellness or well-being program with some work with Ian Shea, and I believe I Am Human. Would you tell us a little bit about how all that came about?
Sure. Well, as I said, we knew we needed help when we were getting started. And so as we had looked for which professionals we might turn to, Ian stood out to us as somebody who could both help guide us in terms of devising a strategy, but also offering programs at the same time that would provide us with some needs analysis data. So that was really what led to the choice of Ian, aside from the fact that he's just a marvelous human being and has an amazing consultancy. And so with Ian, he offers programs called Life Moments. And Life Moments is an opportunity for groups of people to get together. And at the time we were still in person, but we've been able to do these virtually as well. And it's just 4 very simple questions. It's, what's your life moment right now? What does support mean to you? What does support look like? And what would you like the firm to be doing? And people are able to write down their answers, and they get shuffled around the room, and every answer gets read, but nobody knows whose answer it is. And what that really did for us was, particularly at the moment in time, address this fact of, oh my God, I am going to be able to say something, even if right now I want to say it in confidence. I'm not so isolated. Oh, the same thing is happening for that person maybe across the table from me. And then particularly as we got into all the throes of everything that happened in the last 15 months or so, there was so much anger and fear and grief. and this opportunity for people to be able to express that and have some relief. So Ian was very instrumental, in all of that. And from those life moments sessions, that's where we got our data of, okay, what do people really need to focus on? For example, the first one that popped out, which we were not necessarily expecting, was elder care. And that has remained consistent throughout these last 15 months. So that was a very early indication to us that we had something we needed to pay attention to, and then it certainly exploded. So that was a way that, Ian was super helpful to us in kind of hitting a few different points. And since then, he's helped us to sketch out a strategy. And, we kind of continue to grow that.
How often do you do the Life Connections meetings? Or now I guess they're virtual, but how often do you do those? And then is there always an outcome in terms of programming or support?
Mm-hmm. So when we introduced them, which was kind of towards the end of 2019, and we were still in person, we did them in every US office. And then during 2020, when we realized we had to adapt virtually, we did the same thing, but virtually and with a slightly different programming, because obviously people were in front of each other and it was harder to be confidential, but Ian was very adept at getting people to speak anyway. Now we're hoping to reintroduce the life moments in person again, probably at the beginning of next year. So there's been sort of a consistent flow, maybe every 6 months, of information. And yes, when he gives us feedback every time, it's all anonymized. We have no idea who said what or anything like that, but we continue to see the trends of what people are going through in that literally their life moment at that moment in time, and what that support looks like to them and how they want it to look. So that's been very informative to us in making decisions around programs we offer, things we ask our EAP to do, things we're shifting in our benefit plans, all types of things. It's been very, very guiding.
Yeah. One follow-up question for you, because when I was looking at your program and reading about it, I really saw how important that employee feedback was, and it's fairly regular, and so it's coming sort of formally out of these sessions, but also from your pulse surveys. And you had indicated your pulse surveys before. Will you tell us a little bit about that program? How often do you do them? Like, what type of questions do you ask? What do you do with the information once you have it?
Sure. Happy to share.
Thank you.
So we get feedback is a big part of our culture in general. So in this process, we've had the feedback from Ian's programs. I mentioned in the chat, we have an associate and council advisory committee that's been giving us feedback all along. And then we added in our pulse surveys. So pulse surveys by design are meant to be very brief. They shouldn't take more than 5 minutes to fill out. And what we started, everything kind of came together for us at the right moment. We implemented Qualtrics in January of 2020. So we had it at our fingertips for everything. And at the same time, we implemented our new EAP. But in terms of the questions, you want to ask some things that are really consistent, and you want to learn from the experts how to ask them. So for example, one thing we were constantly asking people is, how are you feeling? And the response was in terms of the weather. I'm very rainy, I'm stormy, I'm mild, I'm very sunny, I'm extremely sunny. And at first I was really resistant to that, but then it made a lot of sense. So we would ask people to rate that and then tell us why. And so we've asked that in every single survey, so we can watch the progression of increase or decrease in how people are doing and see from the comments. So it's very important to have some consistency. But we've asked questions about everything. We've asked about, how's your support working at home? We've asked about, are you feeling supported by the firm? We've asked about, give them five or lists of, 15 things to pick from, and which of these things is making you most comfortable or uncomfortable. So it's been pretty much everything from, how's it been working home? How is it as you think about coming back? What are you worried about? Trying to pick up on anxieties and things that we can address, but also what's working. And that's really helpful. because you want to know what made a group of people feel sunny, time after time after time. So those have been the types of things. It's been a bit of a learning process for us because we were implementing it right when it was urgent. And I'd say probably since January, we've probably done a dozen of them, but they've been in different areas too. Other groups have taken them up and are using it. I'm using it more like, say, in DE&I and things like that.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Ellen.
Gretchen, I'm sorry, I must say one other thing. Don't ever ask unless you're going to respond. We've been very clear with reporting out what we've learned, what steps we're taking to address things, maybe what things we can address, but we don't ask unless we're going to answer.
Thank you. Karen, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about the Whole You program. I know that you've mentioned it, but could you just give us a bit of an overview? And one of the things that I was interested in reading some of the information about ORIC's program, just talk a little bit about, how decisions are made within the program and how much is done, what I'm going to say globally or centrally, and how much is done at the local office level.
Sure, yeah. As I mentioned, the whole you strategy is really sort of based on this notion that of interconnection, right? That how we are at home or in our community affects how we show up to work and vice versa, right? So it's hard to really, we don't want to have a siloed approach to things because, everything is so interconnected. Your personal well-being, your professional well-being, that affects your well-being at home, vice versa. So our idea and our strategy behind the Whole You program is really designed to help everyone be more mindful of their whole selves, right? And based again on this understanding of connection. As far as how the program itself is structured, I'd say that we're honestly, we've had some semblance of a well-being program, forever. But I would say that again, in its current iteration, we're really in our infancy, and we began in our infancy, and then COVID hit, and so everything sort of shifted, right? So we're constantly looking for ways to improve and be nimble and adapt to feedback that we get. As I said in the chat, I'm so impressed by Mary Ellen and O'Melveny for her ability to get people to respond so much to all of these surveys. We actually, as a culture, don't support that level of survey giving. I love getting feedback from people, and I'm constantly asking for it. And we do get a lot of feedback from staff and attorneys, and I would say that really also helps drive our decision making. We tried out having a sort of well-being committee. We have still a bunch of what we call champions globally throughout our firm that are mostly at the partner level. We, from the beginning, have had a keen support from all levels of our firm, including our chairman, our executive staff, our management committee, and with that, and just with feedback that we listen to from, again, just a general population level, all of that is really filtered into our decision making and our sort of ongoing edit of our strategy. We also, I straddle sort of the benefit side, as well as the lawyer development, professional development side of the house. And all of those, sort of like hierarchies, sort of organizationally, are sort of cross-sectioned between them. In other words, we have, reporting structures that cover both. So we cover really all aspects of the firm through that way, and a lot of different departments. and we're very collaborative in our decision making. Again, much like I mentioned before, and like what Hannah mentioned, we look at infusing well-being into everything we do. It's not a siloed approach, and so it's a very collaborative cross-sectional way of strategizing and making decisions and adapting programs and communications and policies. Sorry, I was rambling a little bit there, but I think I answered both aspects of your question.
No, I think you did. Thank you. I've noticed that you've been particularly creative with the programming, with offerings for your employees. Can you talk a little bit about some of the support that you've done for, let's say, caregivers over this past year?
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, thank you. I mean, we have as one of our key firm goals is creativity and innovation in all that we do. And that certainly applies to all of the ways in which we try to, come about with ideas and policies and initiatives. So the Caregiver Relief Program grew out of our already implemented program of our Agile work, which is another one of our key benefits. But through feedback that we got and just, again, realizing situationally what was going on for folks with work from home and the pandemic, and certainly early on in the pandemic, before things really started opening up a little bit, we devised this program to offer eligible associates and counsel who are caregivers to work at an 80% schedule, but at full compensation. So it's really just a wonderful opportunity, right, to help out and to just sort of give that little bit of wiggle room to people who, for whatever reason, would qualify for this program. And caregiver could apply to either childcare or elder care. And again, for whatever reason that was relevant to them, where, early on for maybe health reasons or, reasons having to do with the environment and the pandemic, where people couldn't bring caregiving help into their home, and they were forced to, be doing this and work at the same time just themselves. This was an opportunity for us to, really lend a little bit of extra support, right, for that. So that's a program, of course, that we're very proud of.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Tell me a little bit, if you have this information handy, but does that affect the annual hourly billable goal for folks?
So I'm not
in that
sorry.
way. Is there relief if they are reducing their schedule?
I don't, I'm not comfortable speaking to that because I'm not 100% certain.
Okay, yeah, I understand, absolutely.
I was just trying to call up what I do know. If I could devise an answer, a better answer than I don't know.
That's okay. It's very interesting to hear about the program and that it could provide support in just this crazy last period of time, this last year or so.
Yeah, I do know, I will say this, I do know that the non-caregiver aspect of the Agile Work Program, that is trued up at the end of the year, right? So that if they are working more, that their bonus and their salary is trued up. I just didn't want to speak in specifics about this temporary alternate caregiver program with regards to that.
I understand. Thank you for sharing what you could. Hannah, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about McDermott's programs and specifically about some of the billable credits that have been a part of your program for a while around mindfulness activities. Would you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, our chairman is a big supporter of mindful meditation. And we had Dan Harris speak at our partner retreat in 2018, 2017. And he extolled the values and virtues of mindful meditation too. And our chairman really took that to heart. And a couple of weeks later announced 25 hours of billable credit, billable equivalent credit for our associates. So our associates get to take advantage of 25 hours of billable equivalent credit for mindfulness activities. And mindfulness is defined very, very broadly. I've seen people use it when they go on a run, if that's sort of their meditation. We also give that credit if they attend one of our wellness programs. So there's many ways that they can use that. And we're really excited that the associates, use it. It's been great to watch the uptake on it, and they use every single one of those minutes, which of course they should. And in addition to that, we have our professional development hours, which they receive billable equivalent credit for as well. So the combination of those two is pretty significant for them.
Thank you. That's got to really help drive the message and make it core to how business is operated.
Absolutely. Having a chairman that has a mindful meditation practice and talks about it has been great. We have vendors who come in and do mindful meditation every single week, and the uptake has been great because when the chairman talks about it and when there's hours that could be used towards it, everyone wants to participate. So it's been good.
The other element of your program that really stuck out to me was the mentoring aspect that is so core to development for any professional. Will you talk a little bit about how that came about, and then your grassroots effort of infusing well-being into everything? How does that look in the mentoring program? How does that play out?
Absolutely. So we have a really robust mentoring program, as most large law firms do. 100% of our associates around the world, every single one of them has an individual mentor. And then in the US, we also have a great group mentoring program called our cohort program. And what we have done is we have taken wellness and ensured that that is a topic of conversation every single time the mentors meet. They don't always have to speak about it, but we always include an agenda, and it's always the top item on the agenda. So we give out suggested agendas for individual mentor meetings and for these group mentoring cohort meetings. And wellness will always find its way there. We also try to demystify some of the more difficult aspects of it. And no one's forced to talk about it, but we'll ask questions like, what have you done for your mental health lately? What have you done for your emotional well-being lately? What's something that you're going to do today that's going to make you feel better? So we really try to put that into every agenda. We talk about it as much as we can. We encourage the associates to talk about it. The small group mentoring is partner-led. So we encourage the partners to talk about it first. And then the associates feel much more comfortable talking about it. So the whole thing is just demystifying it and bringing this conversation into the light.
That's so interesting. And I love that nuance that the partners speak about their own well-being first. Wow. That's just like a great little nuance there. Thank you so much. Nicole, we're at the top of the hour. We still have time left, but I would really like to dig into kind of your iteration now. So your organization has had what we'll call a traditional wellness program. There has been a bit of a catalyst in the last year to really change things up and to reassess, what the employees need and how it's delivered. Talk a little bit about the needs analysis that you worked with Ann Bradford on.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. So, last year when the committee was formed, part of our remit was to figure out how best to support employees. What do they need? What are the roadblocks? What prevents them from participating? And the really only way to get at that information we felt was to offer an independent solution that could gather all the data and then report back to us in a way where we could kind of pull actionable items. Anne had previously worked with the firm in another engagement, and we felt like she was well suited to partner with the committee and work with us to gather this information. So really, the goal was to get to the underlying root cause that prevents engagement. How can we best support our employees? You know, Mary Ellen has done a great job asking for feedback, and sometimes it's a little bit scary to ask for feedback because they are going to get the raw, honest truth, and sometimes you may not be prepared, you know, for the response that you receive. And to say the feedback from the focus groups that were done, not only in the U.S., across our entire all of our offices, international offices, as well as U.S.-based offices, we wanted to make sure we had good representation of the firm. We're collecting everybody's feedback. So the information that was shared, it was eye-opening, and some of it stung a bit, but you know, I think the committee, as well as the management committee of the firm, is just committed to getting to the root cause and providing support and resources to assist our employees. So one of the things that came out prior to the focus group initially was nobody understood what we offered and what resources were available. So starting last fall, we started with a series of programming to target different areas of our program. So we started with just Covington resources. We did 2 sessions, internal sessions, one for the international offices and then another for US-based offices, where we went through all of the programs and what was offered, built a new intranet website, a wellness website that collected all the information and had it housed in one area. That said, that website will undergo some changes because of feedback that came out of the focus groups conducted by Anne, where the information still needs to be a little bit more easily accessible and readily available and more intuitive. So we're constantly taking information from that needs assessment and trying to build and improve the program. I think Hannah mentioned the support of senior leadership or the mentors and having them share their personal stories. We've found that throughout the programming that we've offered since last fall, the ones that have worked particularly well has resonated with employees when you have senior leaders talking about their personal experience. So we've this month, we're hosting, next week actually, for Mental Health Awareness Month, we're hosting an internal panel where we'll have senior lawyers and professional staff on a panel talking about their mental health situations and how they've managed, if they're open sharing that information. I think that goes to destigmatizing and trying to normalize the conversation and make sure that people are aware that we all, as one of our programs, but we all have mental health. We all struggle with this in one way, shape, or form. So we should be able to talk about this need. The other outcome of the needs assessment was, in addition to not knowing what the resources are, we felt that we needed employees, all levels of employees, positioned throughout the firm to be able to identify when somebody's potentially struggling and guide them to the appropriate resources. So we've taken on a role of offering mental health first aider training across the firm. We have a U.S. tilt to it, where there's a group trained from a U.S. counterpart, and then we have those trained from our international partners. And so far we have about 55 attorneys and staff, and a lot of them are senior level partners who are trained so that when they're having these conversations, with either peers or associates, whomever it is, they can pick up on the cues and potentially start that conversation. If you have more colleagues trained in that regard, then the conversation may be easier to open up and just indicate if they're struggling and how they can receive help. But working with Anne, it has been, really great for us to do this needs assessment and understand what the roadblocks are and come up with immediate short-term and long-term goals. We're not going to be able to accomplish everything day one, right? So we're trying to triage everything in a manner where we think we can slowly incorporate into our various programs. We would love to get to the point where we're doing wellness credits. That's one of our, we would love to be able to offer that. We're not quite there yet, but certainly one of our goals to incorporate.
Nicole, if you're going to accomplish one thing in 2021 for your program, what do you want it to be?
I think continue to increase our engagement. I mean, we struggle with having all levels of employees participate. You will find that professional staff will be more in tune to participating in wellness events, but we want to be able to engage our attorney population as well. The senior lawyer retreat remarks suggest that there is a great need. We really just need to find out the right combination of resources and programs that will engage them and ensure participation. Like I said, I think the panel discussion format that we've done a few times, that has worked particularly well, and we'll continue to try to find ways to bring interesting programs and engaging speakers, and not only offer lecture only format, but do an interactive type of programming that will allow for engagement. But I think it is definitely to continue to increase engagement and ensure employees are aware of the resources that are available to them, and so that they can be connected with the correct resource to help with their needs.
Thank you. Thank you. I have two more questions I really want to get to. And so I'm going to ask, part of the panel one question and part of the panel the other question. So to start off, I'm going to ask Mary Ellen and I'm going to ask Hannah. We talked a little bit about metrics. How do you measure, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, how do you measure your program and its success or its reach, its effectiveness, any of those sorts of things? I would love your thoughts on it.
Well, thoughts will be all you get, because I don't have any magic answers to this one quite yet. I mean, one of the things that the surveys do, as I mentioned earlier, allows us to be consistent in some of the questions we ask, so we can track, where things are improving or where things are not improving. So we do have a little bit of quantitative data in that regard. We also do, standard evaluations after our programs. Like we had a great evaluation after Wellbeing Week in Law, and we try to, again, glean from that. Did we hit the mark? Where do we need to focus more? What worked? Like, what's the format? That's I think a key question maybe we're all struggling with around engagement. What's the format that gets people in? So we're trying to suss that out. But, if you ask me right at this moment to say, do you think your programs are, 50% effective, 80% effective, 100% effective? I don't think we're there yet in terms of being able to know that. And I think part of it is we've got to repeat some stuff to figure that out. And also just figure out the right way to ask the questions when things have concluded. So I don't have a magic answer, but maybe Hannah does.
Okay.
Hannah does not. No, very, very similar. We do a lot of surveys at the end of our programs. We ask for feedback in our general PD survey at the end of every year, and our mentoring survey. The firm does a happiness survey every month, and they're very transparent with the results. But all of that is to say that we struggle with figuring out what the ROI is, what is working, what isn't. And I think that stuff changes constantly as well. So, what worked one year is not necessarily what's going to work another year. There's also things that, would have been great last year, but because of the level of burnout this year, no one's going to attend them, even though they found them particularly effective. It's something that I think we're struggling with and definitely trying to figure out the best way to measure it. So at this point, anecdotal feedback is what we go by, and that's, if anyone else has any ideas, we'd love to hear them.
I think that that's so insightful what you said in terms of a really successful program one year is not going to be a successful program then the next year, depending on the circumstances that are at play. So thank you. I appreciate your candor and your openness. I think we're all trying to figure this out for sure. And Karen and Nicole, I would love to ask you if when you're planning your events for your well-being program and thinking about what's going to be helpful for your staff, how is that transecting with any of your diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts? How is that partnering or overlapping in terms of what you're trying to do to promote overall wellness?
Yeah, sure. I can go first, Karen. So, this month in particular, as we have been focusing on Mental Health Awareness Month in the US, we've had a string of D&I programs that we promoted together. So we took a thematic approach to being Mental Health Awareness Month, and the first week's theme was Align, which we worked with the D&I group to promote the programs that they were offering that. So we tried to co-brand and promote it jointly to ensure that it appears that it's a cohesive program. On an ongoing basis, we're in constant communication with the D&I group to see what resources they're offering. Sometimes they have unique, great speakers that they've come across that they feel would be a good fit for our space, and we've been able to capitalize on that. So I wouldn't say we operate in silo, but we are definitely working in tandem to make sure that the message that we're sending is a cohesive one, and that we're utilizing each other resources. Likewise, there may be wellness resources that contributes to programs that the D&I group they may be putting on, and we've been able to kind of lend our expertise there as well.
Thank you. Karen, how about Ulrich?
Yeah, so like I sort of touched on, I think in some of the other responses, one of the great aspects that we have at Ulrich is that, we have a lot of people who have wellness as a strategic priority in all of our departments, all of our groups, from our chairman to our executive committee. And so, just naturally, we have this infusion of, quote unquote, well-being aspects of things that are not necessarily out of our formal whole you, wellness program. That said, we also have, like I said, a culture and a practice of cross-collaboration and cross-sponsorship, much like what Nicole was touching on. So we do partner, like the whole you side of the house with, me and our larger team. We do look for ways to partner and collaborate with, we have multiple, affinity groups, and we have a formal structure for D&I, a formal department. And so, we look for ways that we can cross-sponsor. They also have just wonderful programming that they've done on their own, completely separate from me and our program. We have partnered multiple times with Dr. Erin Reeves, who's a real expert on the area of not only, D&I issues, but also well-being and how all of those things, again, are interconnected. Again, this whole notion of interconnectivity is a big theme for us. We also throughout this month have had programs, again, somewhat cross-sponsorship, but somewhat just independent of each other, but although we're in communication with each other, so we're not stepping on each other's toes, of a lot of D&I type initiatives that, will, again, just on their own include, nods to wellness and well-being, with or without my input. But again, there's always this culture at our firm of collaboration and sort of checking in with each other if they want my input and feedback. Always happy to provide that from sort of a well-being, perspective. So yeah, I'd say that it's very much intertwined. And also in communications, again, because it's top of mind, we try to include, I think Nicole also was mentioning this, or maybe it was you, Gretchen, ways that we can include in our communications, even if it's about something having to do with diversity, ways that we can include resources about well-being and referencing our EAP, for instance, in those communications. It's not a communication about the EAP, but it references that. So always looking for ways to sort of, like I said, cross-sponsor, sort of bolster each other's goals.
Karen, thank you so much. Nicole as well. We have about 13 minutes. And I know that there was a question or two that came in early on, but I want to encourage anyone who is listening as part of the conversation to enter any sort of questions or comments that you have for the panelists, things that might be helpful as you are developing your program, or more intricacies on what we've mentioned here today. We've got a great, really experienced panel to help out here. So I think if I saw earlier, the one question is really about engagement and how do you continue to get folks to pay attention to the programs, to attend the programs. One of the things that was mentioned, and I know that several of my colleagues on the HR advisory committee have mentioned this, that if there's really important programs, a direct invitation to the entire firm goes out. So it's literally a calendar invite that everyone is party to. And that seems to drive attendance. Certainly you can't do that for all your programs or all your trainings, but that is a great little intervention that I know that folks have used.
I would agree, and we would send a general notice to everyone, and then we'll push out a calendar invite. And we find whenever there's a calendar invite, because there's a reminder that pops up, people tend to participate more in the program than if you just send an email announcing the program. They may or may not remember, even if you send 12 reminders, they may or may not participate. The calendar invites have seemed to work for us. And the other thing is having senior lawyers, senior leaders promote the program itself. That has also helped to drive engagement and help people to participate in the programs.
Absolutely agree. I'll chime in with my 2 cents here. I think having the support from the top, anytime we can have a senior partner office leader, or even our chairman will often be the one to push out some of these policies that we've rolled out, or communications, always great to have it come from someone other than us. Also the calendar invite is great. I would also say that I don't usually advertise that it's being recorded. I find that is helpful. If people ask me, obviously I will tell them. And some of the programs are not recorded, and much to the chagrin of some people, and I get it. But so I don't advertise that. And then I also I mean, pre-COVID, certainly like offering lunch, you know, or food in any way was always a big driver. But also, you know, we pay particular attention and we try to be very mindful of our audience, right? And just sort of sales and marketing 101, as far as the channels we use for sharing content. Like I mentioned, some of the cross-sectional use of other groups, you know, helping us to sponsor things and send reminders out. You know, using CLE credit wherever possible for programs. If it's, you know, between two presenters that I'm deciding between, if one can offer it with CLE, you know, do that. And then just how we market it, you know, knowing your audience, you know, maybe these lawyers might not be interested in coming to something that sounds too, you know, woo-woo. But maybe they're interested in hearing something that will help them focus or help them deal with difficult clients or difficult communication issues, you know. And so what if, you know, that's why they think they're going there? It's like, you know, putting the vegetables in the red sauce, or, you know, like what I do is putting the spinach in my, you know, smoothie with a banana. You know, it doesn't matter that if I don't know that the spinach is in there, you know. So
it's a good analogy. Karen, there's a specific request for you to talk a little bit about the wellness dollars at URIC, and we didn't talk about those.
absolutely, yeah. Sorry, I was just unmute myself again. Yeah, so the wellness dollars is another example of this sort of like cross collaboration where it didn't specifically grow out of our side of the house, but it's something that we do to sort of acknowledge those that have been working, the timekeepers, billable timekeepers that have been working with high intensity. So it's in the form of, you know, a monetary gift certificate, but it's coupled with a list of suggestions and really, you know, key messaging around using the gift to support their well-being, right? So that the intent of the award is not to encourage this, you know, level of work habits or this unsustainable level of work habits, but really to acknowledge and to, you know, convey gratitude to those who just happen to be working long hours, right? But again, also coupled with that, to encourage them to take some time to focus on wellness. And, you know, we're putting our money where our mouth is to not just tell you to do that, but here we're helping and support and paving the way to help make that happen. I should also note that this program, obviously we monitor the hours ongoing in order to be able to bestow the award in the first place, but it also is coupled with the fact that we use it to help monitor and make adjustments if necessary, right? To encourage them to rest and recharge and to have it not be something that will lead to potential burnout, right? So the practice group leader is notified if it happens 3 months in a row. The person again is flagged and then it's elevated to another set of leaders beyond the practice group leader. Again, you know, the implication being to increase this awareness and check in on the attorney. But, you know, it's still acknowledged and rewarded on some level in the form of gratitude payment.
Sorry, struggling with my mute button there as well. Nicole, specifically for you, I'm not sure if you saw this in the comments, but does Covington measure excessive billable hours? And how's that?
Great question. So that, you know, in terms of the excessive billable hours, I'm not aware that it's measured, not necessarily that it is applied. There are no wellness credits applied to that, of course, but I think that question on the billable hours credit or excess billable hours, that is handled more outside of the wellness and it's certainly outside of my scope of understanding with respect to the firm's operations. So I couldn't speak specifically about that, but to my knowledge, all billable hours certainly count towards, bonus entitlement, and there's a true up if in the event someone exceeds their target. There's a consideration from a bonus standpoint, but there is no, to be, as far as I'm aware, tracking of excessive flowers.
Thank you, Nicole. One last question that came in here. We are running down on time. Let's see. Are work-life conflicts at all addressed in the well-being programs? Does anybody want to take that on?
I can talk about a little bit about how we address it. So work-life balance is obviously a big issue, especially this past year. So we do encourage people to talk about it. The firm also did offer people the ability to go part-time if they needed to. And we do program to it as well. So we've had a number of speakers come in and talk about, the balance, to the extent that's probably the wrong word. Balance is not the right word. It's work-life functioning. So we've had a number of people come in, and we've had recently we had a program where the first part of the program talked about young children and elementary school children, and the rest of the program talked about high school age children. There are also programs about elder care and things like that. So we do try to address that piece of it. There's also a push from our leadership committee for associates and income partners to take some time off. Everyone's been working so hard. So that is messaging that is coming from the top. So people are trying to address it. But it's a big challenge, and there's no formulaic approach that we found to it just yet. And it will be interesting to see how it changes over the next year as people go back into offices too. So I think our approach will continue to adjust as we move on.
Hannah, I agree. I don't know that it's a balance that anybody's trying to achieve. That would be like the impossible balance that maybe you could have for like 30 seconds or something like that. Maybe it's more of a continuum. I know I'm not a panelist here today, but if I could just share a little bit about what my firm has done. I think that we recognize that one size does not fit all, and that flexibility is paramount. So, there might be a conflict in one part of somebody's life for a week, a day, an hour, whatever the case may be. But let's flex through that as best we possibly can to support the individual, and that it will stabilize going forward. So I think flexibility was just the name of the game in our last year. The other thing that I think has really helped is giving folks the feeling of, wherever we can, some control over the circumstances, because we've all lost control in this last year. So, when you have those conflicts between work and life, and I personally think it's all kind of life, but when you have those conflicts, is there a way that somebody can be presented choices or thoughts that allows them to take some control in the situation? So that might be a little bit more of a philosophy overall, rather than something embedded and pushed out through our well-being program. But I think that our firm has done a really nice job trying to message to that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would say that we've tried to address that certainly on a variety of levels, certainly on a level of communication and programming. We also really amped up our level of some of these internal groups and forums. For instance, we have a parenting forum at ORIC that has been very active, certainly during work from home, people just informally getting together. It's moderated by lawyers and staff, and everyone just chimes in and gives their input and tips. On an institutional level, we've also rolled out a lot of policies. Certainly recently, we have focused Fridays best practices for trying to avoid unessential internal meetings on Fridays. We try to be mindful. We have a best practice policy about mindful emailing in the evenings and on weekends. We talked about already the caregiver relief program, but also the agile working options. And also we recently rolled out an Unplug policy that offers all billable timekeepers 40 hours of billable credit to take time off. So that is really designed to ensure that everyone can take, at least for 1 week of truly unplugged time. And there's a lot of support and best practices tied to that. And that was, like I said before, that was announced from, the executive committee and our chair. So including their personal vignettes about, how they're doing it, dealing with their clients.
Gretchen, I'm going to jump in for 1 minute just to say sometimes the solutions also look different than what you might think. And what we found, and this was again result of pulse survey, when people were struggling with this, they just wanted more active listening, more understanding. And it really led us to looking at how we could increase empathy across the firm. So it was a very, maybe less concrete approach, but equally as needed.
Yes, yes. That's wonderful. Thank you. I need to thank all of our panelists today. You have all been on the hot seat for the last 90 minutes. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to Ann Bradford and the Institute for Wellbeing in Law for putting on these events, both Wellbeing Week in Law as well as the after party. It's a tremendous amount of work and coordination, and it's so beneficial to us that are trying to develop programs and further the cause. So thank you to all of you today, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and evening.